Most people play Elden Ring with colossal swords, powerful spells, or broken builds. But there's one weapon that is always overlooked: crossbows. I've never really used crossbows before, and I wondered, are these actually good? So naturally, the only logical thing I thought to do was beat the entire game using only crossbows. But I didn't stop just there. This run was also done in first person, using the first person Souls total conversion mod. Right off the bat, one really weird thing about crossbows is that they don't actually scale with any of your stats. This basically means that you don't get any bonus damage from strength, dexterity, or any of the stats. Because of this, I decided to start with the samurai, since it already has the stats needed to wield almost every crossbow in the game. But before I could even shoot anything, I needed an actual crossbow. The easiest option at the time seemed like the Circus Black Key crossbow. This was hidden behind the stone sword key door in Round Table Hall. But like every respectable Elden Ring run, I grabbed Torrent and started the classic 40-minute setup. It included Flask of Wondrous Physic, both halves of the Dectus Medallion, Radagon Sword Seal, and then onto our actual crossbow itself. This crossbow has longer range than most, and it even comes with 20 black key bolts that build up Scarlet Raw. They're amazing, but there's a slight catch. You can only get 90 of these in an entire run. The next problem I found was actually having ammo. Crossbows aren't very useful without bolts. Thankfully, Carle, the early game shop, sells infinite basic bolts. I then visited Iggy to upgrade the crossbow, as he sells Somber Stones 1, 3 to 4. But I only had enough to get this to +3, and I thought that'll do for now for the early bosses. I decided to test out my brand new crossbow on the Tree Sentinel, and yeah, the damage was really bad here. Like wet noodles would have hit him harder. Alright then. Luckily, I'd fought this guy so many times that I basically had his moveset burned into my brain. So after a lot of back and forth, we finally got him, and he dropped the Golden Halberd, which comes with Golden Vow built in. My original plan was to use this for the Golden Vow buff, but I didn't actually really use this much. I decided to also grab the Blue Dancer Charm quick, as this would boost our damage the lighter load we are. This basically means my build was now Naked Guy with a crossbow. This is a fashion statement right here. Next up was our first main boss, Margit. Straight away, I generally could not believe how little damage a +3 crossbow was doing. I mean, you can kill this guy with a +0 sword and be generally okay as long as you've got some health. Once again, much like the Tree Sentinel, I kind of knew his movesets enough to get round it. Decided to commit to the fight even though it was slow. With a lot of patience, a mountain of bolts, Margit eventually went down after only a couple of attempts. Honestly, not bad for a weapon that feels like it fires toothpicks. I could now make my way through Stormvale Castle, but I didn't really do much here other than just run past everything to Godfrey. I did pick up the Arbalist on the way, as this is a heavier crossbow with higher requirements but better damage. But I decided to save this for later as I've already upgraded our current crossbow. For this fight, I decided to use a couple of my limited black key bolts, since I expected this to be a bit longer of a fight. But it turns out the Scarlet Rot actually just destroyed him, and he rotted away instantly, and managed to get him on the first try. He even managed to save a few black key bolts for later. With Godric's defeat, we had our first Great Rune, but we need 2 in order to enter the capital, which meant it was time to plan my next target. For my second Great Rune, I decided to go after Radahn. Now in hindsight, Renala probably would have been a lot easier of a fight, but I thought Radahn's a very, very big target. He's also incredibly weak to Rot. The only requirement is to get to Altus, and I already had the Dectus Medallion for that. Whilst here, I decided to grab the Ritual Sword Talisman for some extra damage, which required killing Demi-Human Queen Gillica, but she's really easy with almost anything you use. Not far from here is the Second Church of Marika, which became my farming spot for Blood Roses to make bleed bolts. I also decided to make a quick stop to Mount Gilmere to grab the pulley crossbow, which we'll be using later. With all that out of the way, it was finally time to fight Radahn. I planned to do this without summoning, and that lasted exactly 1 attempt. After getting absolutely destroyed, I immediately decided, yeah, we're just gonna summon for this. The plan became simple: stay far away, let Scarlet Rot tick, and let the summons do most of the work. And honestly, it went way smoother than I expected. After only a few attempts, Radahn rotted away, and we didn't really have much issues here. This meant I now had 2 Great Runes and could finally enter the capital. But first, there was a small matter of DTS. Normally, you can lure him off the edge, which is generally what you do for a speedrun. So I wondered, could this same technique be done with a crossbow? There isn't any easy way to stagger him with a normal crossbow, but then I had an idea. What about the hand ballista? I shot him normally to see if I could even stagger him with this, and sure enough, it did. Well, kind of. It's more of a micro dagger. So I lured him towards the cliff, which took a little bit of luck, and with a few shots managed to push him far enough back that with one final shot, launched him straight off the edge. Oh, we did it! Yes! See ya! Just like that, we was in the capital. For me, I kind of consider this the halfway point of the game. From here, it's kind of just like boss after boss until end of the game. I decided to go for this gamer skip here, where you scale down the side of the building. I didn't think I'd get it in first person because it's quite tough, but to my surprise, I did. This allowed me to skip pretty much all of Capital and straight line it Godfrey. Godfrey himself, or at least his shade, is not a very difficult fight. He only really does about 3 moves, so it's just about playing patient and shooting him when I could. Honestly, not much happened other than I shot him while backing up. But yeah, I beat him first try. Nothing fancy here really, so I'm just going to skip over this one. With Godfrey's shade out of the way, it was time to move on to Morgan. And for this one, I decided to pull out the pulley crossbow. This crossbow fires 3 bolts in quick succession, so it's perfect for applying status effects. I decided now would be a good time to pick up the blood, poison, cold and rot bone recipes to pair these with the pulley's 3-shot attack. The only slightly tricky one to get was the cold bone recipe from Pidia, as this required defeating Rule Knight Loretta. However, she's pretty easy and didn't really stand much of a chance. It does also mean I'll be farming loads of materials, so I'm going to skip over that as it's pretty boring. Starting off with the rot bolts, we procced rot as soon as possible, and then we swapped to the frostbolt. Frostbite actually increases damage the enemy take by 20% when it procs for 30 seconds, so during that window I swapped to bleed bolts for maximum damage. And honestly, this ended up being one of my smoothest Morgoth fights that I've ever had. He absolutely melted to this, and we barely took any damage. Oh my god, first try. That rot tore through him though, that rot definitely was a good idea. From here, normally you would go to Fire Giant. But I knew that fight was going to take forever because he has 42,000 health. So instead I decided to unlock the DLC early, which I thought that would be better for some reason. There were the main 2 reasons for this. First, some extra talismans that would boost my damage. And the second, there's 2 new crossbows in the DLC that I really wanted to try. First up was heading to Castle Sol to fight Commander Niall. And I decided to go for this fancy skip on this tree, which I was surprised I managed to get first try in first person. I hadn't done this for a while, and it obviously looks a bit weird in first person, but we got it, so I was very proud of that. Then came the actual fight, which turned into an absolute nightmare. Between his summons and trying to reload bots while dodging attacks, it just felt impossible. So instead, I decided to try a cheese out that I used years ago. There used to be a spot outside his arena where you could slowly shoot arrows at him, but I'd never tried this with a crossbow before. In order to do this cheese, you need to use arrows that call status effects, such as roll, and then shoot them through this tiny hole in the wall so they perfectly hit the box. And to my surprise, this actually worked with a crossbow. It was definitely harder to do than with a bow though. About halfway into killing him, I got a stagger with the crossbow, which I didn't think was possible, and I'd never thought I would see, but apparently with enough arrows, you can actually stagger a bot. Unfortunately, the stagger knocked him out the way, and I could no longer cheese him using this spot. So this left me with no choice but to enter the boss arena and fight him head on. The good news about this is that he's a quarter health. The bad news is that he still summons, and that's the painful part. Well, that's what I thought. I looked away for a split second, and his summons despawned? Maybe because he was already so low health. I'm not really sure what happened here, so if anyone knows, let me know in the comments. All I had to do from here is run around the arena, filling him with bolts until he perished. This would have took way longer if his summons didn't randomly disappear, but I'll take the win, I guess. That gave me one of the Haligtree medallion halves, and I quickly grabbed the other one from poor old Albus and headed to the consecrated snowfield. I didn't really do much at consecrated snowfield other than farm loads of crafting materials, and then headed straight on to Mogwyn's palace. And once again, I just made a straight dash to Mog's arena. I opened with Moog's Shackle, which I'd grabbed from the sewers just before coming here. I forgot to show that, sorry. The Shackle can stun Moog twice in his early phase. This allows me to deal huge damage throughout the start. I'd like to say I'm pretty good at the Moog fight, and I didn't expect this to take too long, especially getting his Shackle. But then I noticed something strange was happening. The mod changes how your hitbox works slightly, I believe. And I don't know if this is a bug or if it's intended. Even if you dodge an attack perfectly, if it was to apply a status effect to you, it still applies that status effect, or at least a build up. So what this means is that even though I completely dodged his fire attack, it still caused the bleed build up as if it had hit me. Now, this wasn't a huge problem here because we could avoid a lot of this just by keeping distance. But you'll see later on this becomes a pretty big problem. From here, the strategy was simple, fully crossbow with status effect. I'd also grabbed the Purifying Crystal tier earlier as well by kicking an Eleonora off the cliff. From there, it was just a matter of keeping my distance and proccing as many status effects that I could. Oh my god, there we go. The raw arrows and the poison probably did a fair chunk of that. With Moog's swift defeat, I was in the DLC, and all within 6.5 hours. I don't think it's too shabby considering I'm using just crossbows, and an awful camera setting. Picked up the spread crossbow to start with, which is basically like a shotgun, and the repeating crossbow, which I like to think is a Gatling gun. I also grabbed the Arrow's Soaring Sting talisman. And there was one more talisman I wanted, but that required killing Commander Gaius, which, spoiler alert, with a +6 crossbow, I was not about to try. So for now, I decided to leave the DLC and return to the main game. Started by making my way across the mountaintops of the giants and heading straight for Fire Giant. I've been dreading this fight a little bit because he's got so much health. I decided to go with Rot Arrows as they do a percentage health damage. I normally have trouble getting any status effects to proc against Fire Giant, but the Rot procced super fast, so maybe he's actually really weak Rot and I didn't know. I next went for Bleed, and again this procced really fast. I think it's a case that we're putting in so many bolts in quick succession, the status effects are building up really fast, because we're doing 3 arrows basically in one shot. After a couple minutes of fighting, I finally got him to his second phase. And the nice thing about using a crossbow in this phase is that we had quite easy shots to his eye, which takes 100% increased damage. This would really speed the fight up. I managed to proc Bleed straight out of second phase. After getting the Bleed proc, I decided to get a Rot proc, because every time you cause a status effect, it actually gets harder and harder to cause them status effects. They build up more resistance to the effect itself. My plan from here was just to run around and shoot him with arrows when I could. But after not long, I actually staggered him. I was not expecting to stagger Fire Giant at all. I took full advantage of this and shot him in the eyeball, and it was just a matter of finishing him off as he tried to do a final attack. This was actually my first attempt at Fire Giant, and was not expecting to kill him this fast. You may have noticed I've not been showing many other parts other than the boss fights themselves. And this is because in between bosses I mostly just run around, collected a couple items here and there and skipped every enemy that I possibly could. Trying to kill things with the crossbow was a bit of a nightmare other than bosses, and wasn't really worth the effort for a few thousand runes at this point in the game. Godskin Duo was up next, which is normally a nightmare, but the mod actually stops him from dodging your attack, so this was mostly just shoot, run away, shoot, run away. I also used the pillars to get them stuck. This allowed me to get 3 shots on them without having to worry. This again was one of the easiest Godskin Duo fights I've ever had, outside of putting them to sleep. With Godskin Duo out of the way, we can now upgrade most of our weapons to max level. I wasted no time and rushed straight over to Malik. I'm pretty confident in this fight, so I decided to have the brilliant idea of using the spread crossbow, aka the shotgun. This crossbow fires 10 bolts at once, which sounds amazing. Then I realised it actually only does the damage of 1 single bolt, but costs 10 bolts. I don't really understand the use case of this. There is nothing that you would want to hit in the game to cause you to use 10 bolts instead of 1. So after that experiment failed, I swapped back to the pulley crossbow and my trusty status effect. This worked for the first stage, but as mentioned earlier, the status effects from bosses still hit you even if you dodge them. So that means Maliketh's black blade attack still apply their effects even if you dodge them. And if you don't know, this actually takes a good chunk of your health away. On top of this, it kept turning my screen into a spooky fire nightmare, which was great, and this caused me to die quite a bit. But if there's one thing I'm really good at, it's banging my head against a wall until something eventually works. Fucking no way he didn't bleed again. There's no way. Eventually, it did, but mostly through luck. Come on, just die, please. One more arrow's all we needed. Jesus Christ, man, my hands. That was rough. Did we do anything different? No, we just played a little bit better. Next on the killing list was Sir Gideon. Normally I deal with this fight by simply killing him before he even moves. But unfortunately, this wasn't going to happen here. I did have a plan. We just wasn't going to fight him normally. Instead, I poisoned him, ran away, and repeated that process until he died. Oh, that did loads of damage. Okay, that just frosted him. Nice. Okay, I mean, the fact Gideon was easy as Malekith surprised me. Up to this point, I've been relying heavily on the pulley crossbow. So I decided to mix things up again and try the repeating crossbow. This was great for damage and amazing for applying status effects. You could proc stuff like with one use of it. But the problem was the actual time to get this off and reload. What I found is at the opening of Godfrey I could get this off, but after that I just did not have enough time, or I would just miss bolts because he would dodge. Now I really wanted this weapon to work, but eventually I just had to swap back to the pulley crossbow. Can't actually see. I can't see. And surprisingly, the rest of the fight became incredibly easy with this. All I had to do was carefully time my shots in place and slowly watch Godfrey's health melt away from the different status effects. No, please don't kill me. Just heal, let him die to the rock. Okay, the rock was enough. The rock was enough. Oh my god. This meant it was time for the final boss. But first, I made a terrible life choice. Remember earlier when I mentioned the sharp shot talisman? The one locked behind Commander Gaius? I decided this would be the perfect time to go get it. And just to remind you, this is all completely optional. We don't have to go and kill Commander Gaius, even to beat the DLC. I just thought this would be a good idea to get the sharp shot talisman. Yeah, this is when Gaius and his stupid horse beat the absolute life out of me. I tried cheesing him around the arena wall, I tried running around on my horse trying to shoot him, I even watched YouTube guides. But they didn't really help after an unreasonable amount of preservation. Fuck me, man. I eventually pulled myself together, started paying attention to his moveset, and basically just got good. This was most definitely a skill issue, and this just reminded me of the pain I've got to come if I choose to beat the DLC. That must have been like, what, 20, 30 deaths? I didn't even think he was low, I was just like watching him run around, honestly. I grabbed this well-earned talisman and headed straight for the final boss of the game. I kind of forgot that Elden Beast is immune to every status effect in the game, which was going to be bad because if you haven't noticed, we've been using status effects on it. Now, one other problem with this fight is the fact that you have to fight Radagon and Elden Beast back to back, which I don't mind doing that, but when you've got limited bolts, if you didn't know, you can only hold 99 bolts of each type. And then you don't get to restock, so then you've got to try to kill Elden Beast, who can't be status effect. You have to do a raw 22k damage to him with bolts. So I needed to find a way to conserve bolts. This is where I decided to just change my strategy up. I decided to become really, really tanky and let my status effect do a lot more of the work on Radagon. The solution for this was the Verdigris armor set from the DLC. This is the tankiest armor in the entire game, and getting it is actually pretty easy. You just give this guy severe emotional damage until he basically just gives up on life, which is a little dark.
Sad.
But is that just Moore's corpse? He's just dead. He just came over here and died. He's just dead. Poor Moore. But now I had the best armor in the game. There was just one problem. I didn't actually have enough endurance to wear it. My first thought was to grab the Great Jarl's Arsenal talisman. which massively increases equip load. There we go, and surely we can just kick him here, right? See ya. Duelist vanquished, totally legit. Great Jar's Arsenal. What does that do, you might be asking? That increases our equip load by 19%. But even with that, I still needed more endurance, which meant farming some runes. And what way better to farm runes than defeating Mesmer?
That tarnished, it seemeth.
I made sure to summon Hornset for this fight, as this would remove him as an enemy in the NPC fight later on. And for its worth, he did actually help quite a bit in the first phase, as he could either draw aggro or would attack Mesmer from behind. Oh, he got it. Unfortunately, he did die quite early into the second phase. He killed Hornset, no! It was just me for the last stretch. Mesmer is one of my favourite fights in all of Elden Ring, so this really was not too much of a challenge. It was basically just waiting for the timings to shoot and trying to dodge attacks. The camera angle was a bit messed up, but that kind of is the whole run in first person. But using the same strategy as the rest of the run, the bully crossbow plus status, Mesmer went down surprisingly quick. After beating Mesmer and getting a nice amount of runes, we finally had enough to wear the Verdigris armor and medium roll. Let's see, can we wear our helmet? All this just to wear a helmet. We can, let's go! Which meant it was time to return to the final boss of the game. My strategy was simple here. Slowly take down Radagon with status effects using as little bolts as possible. This did take quite a bit of time though, so when I finally made it through to Elden Beast, I really wanted to play this fight as safe as possible. I knew on opening you could run behind him and get quite a few free hits, although my damage was nothing like it would be if I was just using a normal weapon on a normal run. Since the release of the DLC, you can now summon Torrent during the Elden Beast fight, which made this fight much easier, especially against some of his holy attacks. The fight basically just turned to me running on Torrent, shooting bolts when I could. Halfway through, I made the executive decision to swap to the Arbalist, which has much higher damage per bolt than the Bully Crossbow. This would help me conserve ammo whilst also maximising the amount of damage I could do per bolt. The whole fight basically turned into me shooting him from range and slowly whittling him down. This actually ended up being much easier than I had previously predicted, and probably didn't require me doing such a big setup with getting the heavy armor. I had a close call right near the end, but I managed to gun him down before he got off his Elden Styles move. Finally! Oh my god, it's done. The game was beaten, but unfortunately, I decided the run wasn't over yet and that I would beat the DLC. Romina was first. Other than firing the camera more than the boss, she wasn't too bad. Her raw attacks was pretty annoying, but they was easy to dodge. Well, most of the time. I should also note I had level 12 Skadoo Blessing here. I decided not to go any higher than that, as the first 12 levels provide the most significant boosts, with very diminishing results after that. Despite Romina having over 30,000 health, this fight went extremely fast. At this point, I generally thought I might finish the DLC within the next hour. That optimism did not last long. You might be able to guess why. Because the next fight was the NPC battle, which is easily one of the most hated fights in the entire game. Thanks to speaking to Hornset earlier, I only had to fight Dryleaf Dane and Leather. So I summoned that and tried my usual strategy. It didn't work. These NPCs constantly input read, meaning they dodge almost every shot I was trying to land. I tried the spread crossbow for the wide hitbox, which did work slightly until I ran out of bolts. Again, this thing uses 10 bolts per shot. It runs out very fast. I tried using one of the cannons. I considered these still as a sort of crossbow weapon as you hold them like a crossbow, and thought they surely can't dodge explosions. They could. So I resorted to my final option, summoning. Using Divine Bird Warrior Allness, I thought this would level the playing field. I only had one small problem with using Divine Bird Warrior Allness. I didn't have enough FP to summon him. But instead of respecing or grinding levels, I could use the Cerulean Hidden Tier, which gives unlimited FP for a short time, which just required killing this tree, which was pretty easy. After upgrading Allness and increasing my Spirit Ash level, which just included me running around grabbing these revered Spirit Ashes, here's a little montage, I guess. And the result? Total destruction. Not from me, from Nat and Ornis. They did pretty much everything here, I just shot from range. The fight was over in one attempt. I don't regret anything, but Divine Bird Ornis is being retired. He did well for his only fight. It was now time for the real final boss, Consort Radahn. This boss absolutely lives up to the reputation of being the hardest fight in the game, and fighting him in first person made it even worse. The one advantage I had was that he's very susceptible to status effect, so my strategy was simple: by poison, frost, then bleed, repeat. The first phase wasn't too bad, I know this fight fairly well. The real problem was phase 2. Normally you dodge one of his attacks by sprinting sideways, but in first person mode, that's basically impossible, because you can't sprint sideways. So my solution was extremely scientific. Roll randomly and hope for the best. Surprisingly, this did not work well, so I tried something else: parrying. I couldn't riposte with a crossbow, but the stun still gave me 3 shots while my poison and rot kept kicking. Even better, Radahn tends to repeat the same attack after being parried, meaning I could keep him trapped in a loop. This worked perfectly until about 20% health. When he launches into the sky and comes down like a nuclear missile. It's pretty easy to survive this attack, but it's re-entering the parry loop. When he closes the distance, he can choose one of these moves that just is impossible to dodge in first person mode. And you can see here, I almost had him, but I decided to back up a little bit too far. He broke the loop and I died. Getting that close to victory and losing was absolutely heartbreaking. But after a short tea break, I picked myself up and tried again. I knew getting that close, I could 100% do this. I got him down to 20% health quite easily. Luckily he used the perfect attack to re-engage. Every parry had to be perfect, every shot timing had to be on point, even reloading had to be done at the right times to avoid taking damage. I thought at this point his health was so low, I've got this in the bag. It's just parry, shoot, and it's over. But then he pulled out the worst move I could hope for. He of course pulled out the promised consort move, which requires quite specific timing to dodge. Luckily I was tanky enough just about to survive. I used my final heal, which unfortunately did not take me to full health and left me in a very nervous state, but he only had a little bit of health left. Somehow I managed to keep my cool, and after hours of trying to beat him, he finally went down. Which means I had officially beaten Elden Ring and the DLC using only crossbows in first person. And if there's one thing I've learned from this run, it's that crossbows are truly terrible. Like, the worst. Give me a weapon to do a run with, I guarantee you I will have more fun than using crossbows. The only reason this run even worked was because of the pulley crossbow and status effect. I think trying to use a crossbow without status effects would just take forever and it would not be a pleasurable experience. If you're still watching, consider dropping a like and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. And if you have any other challenge run ideas you'd like to see next, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this challenge run, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.